everybody. Today I'm here to do a video on extended breastfeeding, the truth about extended breastfeeding. So it's just me, not Matt, because this is obviously a female only concern topic, which Matt can't really add anything into. So yeah, let's begin by just chatting about the fact that I've been now breastfeeding for 11, nearly 12 years. So Yuli's the eldest. He stopped breastfeeding around 5 to 6 years. And then Ostara, I think she went up to about 4 years old. And Kai at 3 going on 4 is still breastfeeding at the moment. Okay, so the reasons why we continue to breastfeed, primarily I guess it's to support the immune system. We don't choose to vaccinate, so in a way, breastfeeding is the baby's first and most important immunisation, as the breast milk carries all of my natural antibodies and transfers to the children. But I guess really what we're here to talk about is why breastfeed beyond babyhood into toddlerhood and beyond. And so there are many reasons. First of all, it's really for comfort and soothing in an emotional aspect. Many people use dummies, which in my opinion resemble plastic nipples anyway. So, you know, in young infants into toddlerhood and even, up to 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they are very immature in their brain development and their immune system. And so breastfeeding is just one of the best go-to solutions for when life becomes overwhelming and they need that reconnection with mum. So that for me is a huge important reason to continue breastfeeding beyond babyhood. Second is nutrition. So as you wean your baby onto food, you don't really want the worry of what they're eating, how much they're getting, are they getting enough? Whereas if you don't wean them off of breast milk and just allow that process to gradually come to an end when the child is ready, then you can be reassured that they're getting all of your nourishment, as well as whatever they're taking in as they learn to adapt to solid foods. So yeah, I think, most older children and adults, unless they're strictly vegan, do consume the breast milk of other animals, mostly cows, sometimes goats. And this is really not much different. It's no different to giving that milk in a bottle than it is to, or a sippy cup, than it is to allowing them just to have it as nature intended. And it has the added bonus that, our milk is intended for our species, so it's going to be much better suited nutritionally. So there is a myth that says there's no nutrition in breast milk after a certain age. A lot of people think that's, I don't know what age they think that is, maybe 6 months to a year. But let me read out some facts for you. From 12 to 23 months, 448 millilitres of breast milk provides approximately 29% of energy requirements, 43% of protein requirements, 36% of calcium requirements, 75% of vitamin A requirements, 76% of folate requirements, 94% of vitamin B requirements, and 60% of vitamin C requirements. So that's just a selection of examples of the nutritional value of breast milk, and that's up to roughly 2 years old. So that's obviously the first example of why the myth of no nutrition after a certain age is just not true. And now I'm going to talk about a story. There's a painting to go with this story. I'll try and insert it at this point, but I am new to editing YouTube, so if I can't do that, I'll pop it in the end so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this painting of a young woman breastfeeding an old man in a prison cell was sold for 30 million euros. The painting may look perverse, but the story behind it is from historical records. The poor man was sentenced to death by starvation for stealing a loaf of bread during the reign of Louis XIV in France. The woman was his only daughter and the only visitor to his cell. She was allowed to visit him daily, but was frisked thoroughly such that no food was taken in. When after 4 months the man still survived with no weight loss, the authorities were perplexed and started spying on her in the cell, and to their utter astonishment found her to breastfeed her father to the fullest, sharing her baby's milk. The judges, then realising the compassion and love of the woman for her father, set him free. So this story isn't to highlight the myth that if children aren't weaned, then they'll be breastfeeding forever. It's really to point out the timeless nutritional value of breast milk for all ages. So this man would have, starved to death potentially had he not have had the breast milk, but the breast milk literally provided everything he needed to not have to lose any weight and to stay in good health. So that is definitely an example of how undoubtedly breast milk does contain an amazing nutritional value regardless of age. So next, let's go on to what do the official guidelines suggest about the length to breastfeed. So you've got the World Health Organization, and the another prominent body is the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is a fairly new one to come in with the WHO, and now both of them recommend breastfeeding for at least 2 years and beyond, as desired by the mother and child. So that's at least 2 years, and I'd say by the time most women are breastfeeding past 1 year, they get the sort of the reaction of your child's too old to breastfeed. So it's very interesting that even within the conventional authorities, they are agreeing that it's actually really beneficial for a child up to toddlerhood to continue breastfeeding. The research suggests that I have been looking at, I'll post links in the description below, that breastfeeding supports a developing immune system, and typically the immune system becomes fully developed around the age of as high as 7 to 8 years old. Okay, now interestingly enough, this is the rough age that children naturally wean themselves. It can be earlier for sure, but it ranges from 2 to 7 years when you look at it on a worldwide scale. If children are left to naturally wean, that's somewhere between the ages of 2 and 7, roughly. They will wean themselves, and that's when the milk teeth all start to fall out as well, which physically changes the shape of the jaw, makes it more difficult to latch on and breastfeed. So yeah, that's very interesting to learn about. So really, let's conclude this section now on the truth about extended breastfeeding. Is really not that it's not normal and something perverse, or it's definitely nothing sexual. So the breasts were designed for feeding babies, and in many cultures, like the tribal cultures, the women walk around with their long skirts and their bottom parts covered, but they walk around with their breasts out, and the men don't even batter an eyelid, because they're not seen as a sexual object. I think very much the culture of pornography in the Western culture has encouraged that thing to develop in men, that they are seeing women's breasts as for them, not for feeding children. Yeah, in a minute, Kai. It shouldn't really be seen as something that's abnormal, but rather, I think the problem is with extended breastfeeding is that we're using the term extended breastfeeding. It's not extended at all. If anything, it should be really called natural / full-term breastfeeding, because it's how nature intended it to be. And when you stop breastfeeding a young infant for less than 2 years, it perhaps should be retermed restricted breastfeeding, because you are cutting short what would naturally happen. And so obviously the babies don't get an opportunity to shout about it when you cut it short, but I think they would do if they could talk and tell you, this is not long enough, I need to continue. Hello. You're going to say hello. And what do you think about bonbons? Do you like breastfeeding? So you're going to say goodbye to everyone then? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Then, guys. Yeah, so let's reterm it. Let's normalize it and call it natural full term breastfeeding. Exactly what it is. Thank you. Bye.